I'm going to do just a brief monologue, and then I'm going to invite you to join me in a something that hopefully you'll take beyond this time and space. And if you're just wandering by, this is part of an educational conference art installation. There's going to be several of us performing, and you're welcome to be a part of this. So I was thinking about the monuments, and can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
And I was trying to sort of imagine myself into conversations with Martin Luther King Jr. and wondering what he would have to say to me here and now, or what he would have to say to us here and now. And then I found myself wondering about Bayard Rustin, who was a key organizer and advisor to King. Bayard Rustin was gay, and I wondered what he might have to say to us and to me here and now, today. And as I was pondering this and thinking about today and our time together, somehow I just couldn't avoid looking at what's been happening in North Carolina and in Mississippi with laws that have been passed there within the last couple of weeks, legalizing discrimination against transgender people. And in Mississippi, basically codifying discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer folks. And just really being aware, as I know a lot of us as artists are, of the impact of those laws on people's bodies, on my body, on the bodies of people I know and I care about. I've got to acknowledge that as a white, genderqueer, lesbian woman, I've got a lot of privilege that a lot of my trans siblings don't have. You know, trans people of color, for instance, are the most at risk of anti-trans violence. And at the same time, I feel the impact of those laws on my body, in my body, attacking my body and attacking the bodies of my trans siblings, known and unknown. So I researched. And because these laws are so recent, most of my research was on the internet. And as I was looking for examples of the bills and quotes from the legislations and statistics and headlines of people's stories who've been affected by these bills, I started to realize as I was sort of reading this stuff and seeking this stuff out and preparing to perform with it today, how toxic this stuff is. And again, how deeply it impacts my body, how much it weighs me down. But there are words that I think need to be spoken.
Amen.
So, yeah. You know, I acknowledge, and in the improvisational flavor of today, my words aren't necessarily tidy and coherent, but then I kind of thought, you know what, that's appropriate. That kind of reflects the day-to-day barrage that trans folks experience, and LGBTQ folks, but I'm particularly focusing on trans folks because I think they're particularly vulnerable. The barrage that they experience from the media, from politicians, from religious leaders, sometimes even from their families and their friends and their colleagues. There are words that need to be spoken. And so I was trying to think, how do we even find words that kind of communicate that weight? And somehow the image of stones came to mind for me, because stones are substantial, they're weighty. And stones have a rich history of symbolism as well. You know, I was thinking about the Christian scriptural story where Jesus is with a group of critics. I'm also a queer minister. Jesus was with a group of critics who were getting ready to stone a woman guilty of the sin of adultery. And Jesus said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. That's what's written on this one. And thinking about how that story and stories like it are often used to, I think, to abuse gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender people with the whole kind of love the sin or hate the sin rhetoric. One of my students this week, when I was telling her about this installation, reminded me that some Jewish communities place stones on the grave sites of their loved ones. And I'm sure there are a whole lot of other rich symbolisms that we could find with stones, but somehow it just felt tangible and weighty. And so some of my students at Arcadia created these for us, and each one of them has either a direct quote from one of these legislations, or a headline, or a story of someone impacted by these kinds of issues. Like for instance, I think this is about a year ago, 19-year-old and 14-year-old teens pled guilty to beating a transgender woman at a Rosedale McDonald's. There was a video recorded that showed a McDonald's employee on his cell phone, or that he recorded it on his cell phone and posted it online, capturing part of the attack. It showed this transgender woman of color being kicked and struck in the head and then dragged by her hair across the floor. To be clear, this was when she was found in the wrong bathroom. And then she apparently suffered a seizure while onlookers laughed on camera. These laws, especially the ones where they specifically are talking about gender and bathrooms and what bathrooms you're allowed to use and not allowed to use, effectively force trans people to out themselves. You know, for me, it's a day-to-day issue. When I went pee just now, I had to be really conscious of talking to lots of people so that they knew that I knew I was a woman in the women's bathroom. It's a small thing I deal with all the time, but for someone like this young woman, it's life and death. So we've got a quote from the North Carolina bill, a bill to be entitled an act, this was the title of the bill, I think, a bill to be entitled an act to provide for single-sex, multiple occupancy bathrooms and changing facilities in schools and public agencies, and to create statewide consistency and regulation of employment and public accommodations. It's a lot of verbiage. The Mississippi law that just passed on Tuesday, and it's even more sweeping in terms of its impact on LGBT people. HB 1523, they call it the Protecting Freedom of Conscience from Government Discrimination Act. And a lot of these bills have religious roots. I think 35% of them, or one of the statistic is in here somewhere, that a huge number of these bills have religious roots. Anyways, the stones and the weight of these laws. And so my invitation to you right now is to share this weight by taking 2 or 3 of these stones, maybe reading one of them aloud right now. So let's start with that, and then I'll tell you what the next piece of it is. So I invite you to take a stone or 2 or 3, and I'm gonna invite you to keep it, and I'll tell you what to do with it afterwards. Inviting you to share this weight. And just a few of us maybe, if you want to read what's on your stone, nice and loud, and if a few people are reading at the same time, that's fine. So just so we can hear some of these words.
State lawmakers introduced more than 115 anti-LGBT laws in 2015.
The largest number of anti-LGBT bills introduced in 2015 were religious refusal bills. Mississippi has Don't Say Gay school regulation. Louisiana has Don't Say Gay school regulation.
Texas has Don't Say Gay school regulation. Oklahoma has Don't Say Gay school regulation.
Texas constitutional or statutory religious exemption law. Virginia, constitutional or statutory religious exemption law.
Arizona, constitutional or statutory religious exemption law.
Kansas, constitutional or statutory religions exemption law.
Kansas State Bill 513, creating the Student Physical Privacy Act, introduced in March, states that students can sue their school for $2,500 each time they encounter someone of the opposite sex in the bathroom.
Alabama has Don't Say Gay school regulations. South Carolina has Don't Say Gay school regulations. Nebraska has Don't Say Gay school regulations.
Illinois, constituted or statutory exemption law. Indiana, constitutional or statutory exemption law.
So I know the impulse was to go for the smaller stones, but afterwards I invite you to read some of the larger stones because they tell stories and they have more detail. But my invitation to you is to take a couple of these stones with you back to wherever home is. I know flights and stuff may may limit what you can take, but at least to take one. If you can take 2 or 3, I would love that, because I literally carried 50 pounds of stones here for this. And I'm willing to carry back when I need to, but I invite you to share that weight with me. And to take your stones and to do something with them. So maybe your stone will be a conversation starter. I had just a total stranger walk by, and she said she was from AERA, but she took one to have a conversation with her students back home. Or symbolically throw it in a lake or an ocean or a body of water or in a fire, but to do something with it. And I also invite you to take a photo of what you do or of something that communicates what you've done and email me that photo. I'm going to give you a handout with my email address, and I'll create a visual collage and send it to Joe for his website. I invite you to share this weight and to share the actions and the conversations that we can do together to create change. Thank you.
Thank you.